All rise and turn to order. Superior Court of California, County of Siskiyou, now in session. You may be seated.
Thank you. So I want to welcome all of you. I see a lot of familiar faces, and we have now the pleasure of being able to fully pull our courtroom, our courthouse together. And it is my distinct pleasure first to introduce you to the Chief Justice for the California State Supreme Court, Tani Cantillo Sakayua. Mr. Martin Hoshino, the Administrative Director for the California Judicial Council, was making efforts to be here as well. And he came down to having to make a choice between coming to Siskiyou County or helping his son with his son's wedding. And for some reason, he chose the son. I want to just address a couple of things first. The judicial branch has made a tremendous commitment to repairing and to maintaining and to rebuild the infrastructure of the judicial branch. That has made a wonderful difference in the quality of being able to bring justice into our communities. We have this as a demonstration of the dedication to that building of our infrastructure. And although this is a wonderful building, a building should be more than just floors and walls and a roof. It should have a soul. Madam Chief Justice, I'd like to take just a few moments to tell you about some of the members of our local community who have been instrumental in giving this building its community soul. First, we have those people who had the vision of a new courthouse in Siskiyou County, located as close as possible to our historic courthouse. And the city of Yreka, the county of Siskiyou, and our court worked together to be able to locate this building as close as possible to our traditional historic courthouse. I'd like to identify some of those persons who were instrumental in that first phase. Before I go too much further, I'm going to tell you that there were too many people who lent their talent and lent their time to this effort to be able to name each one of you today. But I do specifically want to mention the Honorable Laura Masanaga, retired. She's not present today, but she had the vision. Along with her was Mary Frances McHugh. Mary Frances, are you present? Thank you. At the time that Mary Frances McHugh and Judge Masanaga worked together, Mary Frances was the city attorney for the city of Yreka. And they were assisted by our former CEO, who was unable to be here today, Larry Gobelman, along with Mary Frances and with Judge Masanaga, Renee McKenna Crane assisted as our, would you please stand up? As our assistant CEO, and she is now our very competent and reliable court CEO. We had people who were dedicated to this from the county of Siskiyou and city of Yreka. If you are here, I'm going to ask that you stand up and stay standing. I'm going to ask that maybe we hold the applause. And is Grace Bennett present? Terry Barber. Grace Bennett was a former and now retired from our County Board of Supervisors, but she was also a Yreka City Council member. Brian McDermott, former CAO for Siskiyou County. Brian Meeks, former City of Yreka manager. Steve Baker, former City of Yreka city manager. Rory McNeil. Robert Bachego. Frank DeMarco. Ms. McNeil was former city council member. Mr. Bachego is a former Yreka city council member too. And Ed Valenzuela, our former and current Board of Supervisors. Yes, Mr. Bachego, do you feel a little odd being the only person standing up? Go ahead and have a seat. And Michael Kobseff, our current and at the time also served as a county board member. We have a couple members of our local bar association. Albert, we also known as Hooch Newton, and Mike Newton. Now next are those who gave their homes and their offices for this project. There are people who lived on this property and lived here for decades before they understood the importance of having our courthouse here. So I do want to recognize the former property owners. First, we had attorney Eric Bergstrom. I don't know if Mr. Bergstrom is, Mr. Bergstrom, you gave up your office. Thank you so much. And then Mary Ellen Rock, Mr. and Mrs. Veal, Mr. and Mrs. Potter, and Bob and Mary Peters. They all had homes that had been established here for a long time, and they were willing to say, the city, the county needs this building. We'll go ahead and relocate. Now, there are many who gave their insight to make this project meet the needs, the unique needs of Siskiyou County. First of all, Eric Selfies, our court IT officer. He turned such a wonderful shade of red. Go ahead and have a seat. Thank you. The former project manager, Leland Roberts, who is now living, I believe, in Vermont with his family. Zolkar Hello, who was a project manager, and I believe that he is unable to be here today. Brad Blemker, Mary Bustamante Sr., or Mary Bustamante, Bruce Newman, Steve Shelley, and Maria Blaze. They were all dedicated to this from the Judicial Council. We very much appreciate the good work that you've all done to get this wonderful building as comfortable as you've done. And there are many others, as I said, who've made important contributions, and I'm unable to name them all, but that doesn't mean that we don't recognize their contribution. Without their efforts, this courthouse project would not have been strategically positioned to be one of the chosen to proceed early when funds were not certain. The project would not reflect the unique character of our larger community without the help of all of you. And those who've worked through weather and through COVID have been remarkable, and we thank you. Siskiyou County is a proud community. And now we have a courthouse that reflects us and that we can be proud of. Finally, I would just like to thank once more the efforts of the Judicial Council and our judicial branch, the great efforts of the city of Yreka and of Siskiyou County, and those members of our local court who work so hard to see this happen. Thank you all very much. And I'm now going to invite our Chief Justice, Tani Kantil Sukayua. Close. Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Judge Dixon. And also, it's a pleasure to be here with you and with your distinguished jurists of Siskiyou County. I'm Tani Kantil Sakaua. I'm the Chief Justice of California, and I chair the Judicial Council. And I am proud to be in this room with you today, and I honor the names of all the people that Judge Dixon mentioned, because a courthouse of this beauty and this strength and that will last into the millennia, into the next millennia, cannot be done by one person or just a few people. It takes a concentrated effort of community. And by community, I mean state, I mean judicial, I mean local, city, municipality, and individuals. And you might be interested to know that the California Judicial Branch, the largest judiciary law trained in the world, is the only judicial branch that builds courthouses. Every other judicial branch in the United States, when I talk to their chiefs, if they want a building, they have to go to the state legislature and stand in line in competition for every other building that is going on that is state funded in that state. I had the uncomfortable conversation with the Chief Justice of Hawaii about his efforts to build one courthouse in that state and the favors and the hope that they had for one courthouse. But historically, in 2002, when I was still a trial judge in Sacramento, the Judicial Council of California, which is a constitutional body, had big dreams. And their biggest dream was that the third branch of government, the judicial branch, would take over every courthouse in California. That was over 500 buildings at that time. That was over millions of square feet. And we were going to take over not only the maintenance, and it was deferred maintenance of these buildings, some of them on seismic lines. We were going to not only repair them, we were going to build them. So the Judicial Council had to go out and hire engineers and architects and designers to start this process of evaluation. How do you evaluate what should be built, what should be raised, and what should be repaired? And it took over, I'd say, 7 to 8 years for the counties to transfer the buildings to the judiciary. And when they transferred the building, they didn't come fully repaired. They didn't come fully cleaned. They came in their current state. So it was by the time of 2009, 2010 that the judiciary had in its receipt just about every single courthouse in California. And that's when we brought together a group of judges and court professionals and lawyers. And we said, let's rank how we should build and where we should build. And Siskiyou County qualified as an immediate need. We need to build a courthouse immediately there because your legacy courthouse, from what I understand, was built in 1857. So think about it, only 164 years to get a new courthouse. And so that's where we are today. And let me also point out that when I see the layout of this court and I see where the judicial officer sits, and I know where the attorneys will toil and where the accused will sit, and I can't think of a better place, a more elegant, clarifying architecture in which to be at your best at an opportunity for justice. And when we think about building courthouses, we don't think about building them for ourselves and where we'll be housed. We think about serving the public and the disabled. We think about the sound, the acoustics. We think about the safety. We think about ensuring that you as a public member coming to your building won't have to risk maybe walking down the hall, as in some courthouses, next to incarcerated individuals who are being brought to court. Safety, accessibility, in a place that will give everyone a fair shake is what is most sought after in our building of courthouses. And interestingly enough, we've had some close calls. I'm here in Siskiyou primarily because Siskiyou is close to my heart. I remember that you were 2 weeks from digging, 2 weeks. I hear you smile and laugh. I know you remember this. And then we were told there's no more money. This was the Great Recession. You may not recall. We had a fund to build courthouses. Attorneys had dedicated and agreed to pay part of their fee in order that we could build courthouses for them and their clients and the public. And we were such good stewards that during the recession, the legislature borrowed from us. They borrowed from the judiciary, from our building fund. And then they kept borrowing and kept borrowing. And then finally they said, we're just taking it. We'll pay you back when we get better. Well, that didn't happen for a long time. So 2016, we were stopped in our tracks for the Siskiyou Courthouse. But a few years later, with the Judicial Council, with your influence, with us going to the legislature and explaining civics that courthouses are government buildings, they've actually finally decided to take over funding courthouses because they see them for what they are, the centers of government for government. And so now we face a different future. We hope to have many more Siskiyous, many more buildings. Currently, we have built 31 new courthouses. We have 8 pending. And every budget year, we ask the governor and the legislature for more money to build more courthouses. And we're slowly going through our needs list because we are the only entity that even thinks about courthouses and thinks about the public appearing here and trying to ensure their safety. And it's not that we are less important in the legislature or in the halls of the governor's office. It's just that they have so many other pressing problems in a state of this size. So I thank the lawyers and I thank the judges and the community members and the staff and the homeowners and the office holders who gave up this space in order that this could be built, because it's that kind of community cooperation that keeps you at the top of the list when it comes to building a courthouse. And I know that Judge Dixon has named many people involved, and I brought a list of, because I asked who's been on the ground as well in the creation. Let me tell you that other judges in other counties throughout this state have voted that Siskiyou be built first. They have, over their own court needs, said Siskiyou deserves to be immediate need, deserves to be built, because that's the kind of people that most judges are, putting others' needs before their own in light of the fact of uncontrovertible evidence. So let me say that the Courthouse Project Advisory Group, The Honorable William Davis, presiding judge, Superior Court of Siskiyou from 2019. The Honorable Karen Dixon, then assistant presiding judge, Superior Court, Siskiyou County. Renee McKenna Crane, CEO. Lisa Nixon, member Board of Supervisors. Terry Barber, County Administrative Officer. Stephen Baker, City Manager. Leland Roberts, Judicial Council of California. And also, we had 4 of your judges and 1 CEO keeping an eye on this process. Again, now the Honorable Karen Dixon, presiding judge. The Honorable Joanne M. Bisego, assistant presiding judge. The Honorable John W. Lawrence, judge. The Honorable Thomas John Linville II, commissioner. And Ms. Renee McKenna Crane, court executive officer. These are tenacious dreamers and made the dream come true. And from the Judicial Council of California, Martin Hashino, who's building a deck for his son's wedding, bless him. Millicent Tidwell, Chief Deputy Director. John Wardlaw, Chief Administrative Officer. Pella McCormick, Director. Please, Pella, stand. Facility Services. This is the woman who you talk to when you need something that has anything to do with the building. Congratulations, Pella. Jagan Singh, Principal Manager. Facility Services, you stand, because thank you so much. Thank you. These are complaint central, but they get work done. Peggy Simons, Manager, Facility Services. Brad Blemker, Manager, Facility Services. Zolkar Hilal, Senior Project Manager, Facility Services. Leland Roberts, retired Senior Project Manager, Facility Services. A collective effort of dedicated people who are public servants. Thank you for your work.
I have the pleasure of reintroducing you all to our retired, very own author and retired judge, Robert Castor. Bob.
I wasn't sure if she said very own or very old. So it's a little bit hard to follow the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, but I will give it a try. Actually, we don't get Chief Justices here very often. And to my knowledge, the last time we had a Chief Justice here was almost a quarter of a century ago. It was in 1997. And it was Chief Justice Ron George, and he had made it his mission to visit all of the court, or to visit the courthouses in all 58 counties in the state. And so we were on his list, and I think his initial plan was to be here for a short period of time, a quick stopover and talk to our people, and then maybe stay an hour or so, and then he had other courthouses to visit. But we convinced him to stay a little bit longer, and actually convinced him to spend the night. And we ultimately had an event at the Mount Shasta Resort, which at that time was brand new, that turned out to be just a really lovely reception and dinner with the Chief Justice and Bill Vickery, his administrative director, and a lot of our local people. And it was quite an event. And there is a photograph that I looked at just before coming in here today that memorialized that, a picture of the Chief Justice and our local judges with Mount Shasta as the backdrop. So we do appreciate and welcome Chief Justice Sakaue and the rest of you folks that are here from the Judicial Council. And we invite you to enjoy our county while you're here. If you have the time, it's fall is a great time to be here in Siskiyou County. And so hope you can do that. When I come into this building, and I've been retired for a lot of years, and so I don't come in here very often, but I have to confess that I'm a little intimidated by the building. When I go back to the inner sanctum secure areas where the judges' chambers are and where the areas where they bring the inmates that have to go to court. It's pretty scary. I don't want to lose sight of the person that's showing me around. I have a fear that I'm going to get lost. It's kind of like, for those of you that are old enough, the Kingston Trio had a song back in the 50s called the MTA. It's about poor old Charlie. Had enough money to get on the Boston subway, but he didn't have enough money to get off. So he spent the rest of his life riding in that subway. And the song goes, well, he never returned. No, he'll never return. His fate is still unlearned. Poor old Charlie. And like Charlie, I have this fear that when I walk back there, I may never be able to get out again. So the building does have some quirks, but I am really, really proud of the building and the project, and believe that the construction of this courthouse will be considered by future historians as a major event that benefits our town and all of Siskiyou County. And there's a lot of things about this courthouse that are really great, and I'm not going to, I know that a lot of them already talked about, so I won't just repeat it. Safety, security, and accessibility are the goals. And I think this building accomplishes that, excuse me, very successfully. I just want to talk about one incident, and it kind of emphasizes the safety and security feature of the building. A lot of us here probably still have vivid memories of the day, October 20th, 2000, it was almost 21 years ago. And I remember I was in my chambers and I heard the distinct sound of gunshots and screaming in the hallway outside of my chambers. And that horror case was a man named Edward Lansdale. 12 years before, Mr. Lansdale had sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl. When the case finally got to trial, his victim was about 26 years old and married. Lansdale was 68 and one of the most harmless looking guys. He was a geezer, one of the most harmless looking guys you could imagine. The trial had gone on for a week or so, and I think Judge Davis was actually you were the prosecuting attorney for that trial. And the jurors were deliberating in the jury room. And I was sitting at my desk when suddenly I heard loud shouting and screaming and sounds that I was sure were gunshots. The jurors heard them too and crammed themselves into the tiny little bathrooms that were adjacent to what we used as a jury room in that other building. Lansdale had apparently hidden a small handgun in one of the courthouse restrooms. When the jury was deliberating, he retrieved the gun and chased both his victim and her husband down the hall, shooting at them and wounding them both. He stopped at the stairwell landing between the second floor and the first floor, turned the gun onto himself, and died shortly thereafter. Fortunately, the victim and her husband, although seriously injured, recovered fully. So that incident was the catalyst to the creation of the court security system as it came to be in our old building. The court then installed a security system, a screening system, and limited the public access for the first time. But even with that, the old location, and all of you that are here that have worked in that old location will verify that, I'm sure, it continued to be a tragic accident or a tragic incident waiting to happen. There are some really important reasons why the decision was made to build a new facility rather than to try to remodel the old one. After much study, it was determined there was simply no practical way to retrofit the existing building to meet contemporary security standards. Courts are unique, and you have in courts the situation where inmates from the jail are brought into the courthouse on a daily basis for their court appearances. In the old building, the inmate van parked on the street outside the building. The inmates were offloaded from the van, marched along the public sidewalk, through the door into the courthouse, up or down the staircase, into the public hallway, and then into the courtroom. And most of the time, if you were a visitor to the courthouse, you would find yourself commingling with shackled inmates in orange jumpsuits in the hallways. There were no holding cells, and inmates were kept in an unsecured jury room while awaiting their court appearances. So I do have mixed emotions about praising the modern security technology. Most of us, I think, would love to go back to the old days when you could walk into your local courthouse without having to empty your pockets or pass through an X-ray machine. We want our courts to be accessible, but we also want them to be safe and secure. And today's world is far different from the way it was in the old days. Accessibility and security are goals that pull from opposite directions. The new courthouse will do a fine job of accomplishing both of these conflicting objectives. So I think I've talked longer than my allocated time, but let me just say that the project is important to me personally, having spent more than 20 years working in the old courthouse and having participated in the early planning stages of this project to build a new one. I know from personal experience how inadequate our old courthouse was. I have lots of war stories, which time doesn't permit at this point. The courthouse is the product of a combination of many good things coming together. It's the result of the vision and the hard work and never say die perseverance of the people who have made it happen. This and a remarkable working together of officials representing the state, the county, the city, and our local court. This sort of cooperation and collaboration between government officials is rarely seen, I think, in today's world, and truly remarkable. So thank you, and thank you for being here.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for being present. Ms. Nixon, I do wish you'd stand up and say hello to us all. Go ahead and have a seat. Oh. Does he still work? We need court report. Okay. Once more, thank you all for being here. Thank you for being part of getting this project from gleam in Mary Francis's eye to fruition. We do have refreshments across the hallway in the jury assembly room, and we would be very honored if you would spend some time with us. We will also be able to give you some touring of the courthouse. So thank you all. Bye-bye.